Welcome back to In His Mind. I'm just tired. I'm going to check and see if this is working alright. How's this looking? Welcome back to In His Mind. Perfect. I'm just tired. Perfect. So, I'm not going to be here for too long. I need to talk about a couple things, but this 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. schedule is crippling. I can't do what I want to do, and whenever I have the time, I'm just exhausted. I'm tired. I'm covering my shift for someone, and it's a lot worse than, well, it is. It was exactly as I expected it to be. Very frustrating. So, the name not being there. Vadi, I can't even say his name. Vadi Backham? Ugh. Let me look that up real quick. Vadi, where are you at? I meant to talk about him too, but I don't know much about him. He lived and he passed away. When did Vadi Baucham pass away?
I found this on the web.
Okay. September 26th. No. September 26th, 2025. Okay, so this whole month has been crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, so he did pass away almost a month ago. Wow. I meant to talk about that. I meant to talk about some other things too. I don't know much about the man. I've been meaning to look into his life. And I only know him because of Manuel, my friend, the one whose church I try to help out with. So there's a lot of things I need to look into as far as his teachings and stuff like that. But what I've heard, I've genuinely liked so far. So I needed to address that before it gets any later, but this week it's just been awful. Everything's been awful this entire month and last month and the month before that. So just fit it in where you're able to, you know? So the second part of this, not being there, is actually tied to this, because this was on my mind as well. I need to scroll all the way back down to this. So Bless God Studios, Ruslan ended up talking about this as well. He tried ghost hunting. Now he's warning everyone. The truth about ghost hunting that no one is telling you by Omar Gosh TV. Because Bless God Studios, Ruslan, and a few others, they refuse to put the sources up. Omar Gosh TV, he talks about it. I'm going to play a clip here.
And I'm kind of guilty of that myself. I've seen it through the dead, or try to talk to the dead. I get it. Happiness now. I didn't want to let go. But the moment I finally did, yes, I lost a lot of money, subscribers, and even people who I thought were friends. But I have a peace and happiness now that no amount of money could ever buy. So why do people talk to the dead, or try to talk to the dead? I get it. People want answers. They want closure. They want to know if their loved ones are okay. And I'm kind of guilty of that myself. I've seen it through my own videos, viewers writing things like, I just wish I could hear from my mom or dad again, or my brother or sister. Is my brother watching over me? Can I communicate with them using the equipment they're using? That longing is real. But here's the hard truth. If you try to connect with the dead, the Bible says you're not talking to who you think you are. And I kind of knew this in the back of my mind. And the Bible's crystal clear about this stuff. In Deuteronomy 18:10 through 12, it says, "Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery."
Omargosh TV. Omargosh TV. This was about a month ago. And the passage he's talking about here is Deuteronomy 18:10 through 12. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium, or a spiritist, or who consults the dead. I've covered this topic a couple times. One was over like two to 3 years ago, where actually like it was labeled like curses, witchcraft, something like that. Tried talking to this one witch. Conversation broke down, and she misunderstood some things. And yeah, I never had a conversation there, but I was friends with her, quote unquote, for like 3 years. She didn't tell me she was a witch. She told me that she was a. Give me a second. She was a Wiccan. I don't know if she was using that as a cover, if she was lying. I don't know. So, the truth about ghost hunting that no one is telling you. And the reason why this also falls into the title here is because I had 2 different dreams, 2 different, way, like, years apart. Sometime after 2009, when my brother ended up taking his own life. And the story is a little sad there. Now, the other time that was happened with an NCO that caused me just one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest obstacles in my entire life. So one was involving my brother, and the other one was involving NCO that just caused a lot of issues, a lot of pain, and a lot of problems. Well, you know, personally speaking. So I had a dream about where I visited each one, and so 2019 and another one in probably 2010, 2011, 2012. We're still talking nearly 10 years apart. And being able to talk to someone in a dream is very, very interesting. Now, this whole past week, I've had crazy dreams. 2 days ago, I dreamed I was in space, like a really cool dream and all that. I'll get to that in a second, but the thing is, there's a verse that talks about, and I'm going to see if I can look this up too while I'm talking here, just to kind of use as a reference point to, you know, not being there. Do I love the Bible app? Just later. Okay. I lost my entire train of thought. Thanks. God of the living. Matthew 22:32. Okay, so when Jesus was, this was marriage of the resurrection, that under little topic in Matthew 22. The same day the Sadducees who say there is no resurrection came to him with a question. And this does tie in with the dreams and talking with my brother and the NCO that caused me years worth of grief. I'm going to paraphrase here. Moses told us if a man died without children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for him. And so pretty much they all died and left no children. And then finally the woman died. Now, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be of the 7, since all of them were married to her? Jesus replied, "You are in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like angels in heaven. But about the resurrection of the dead, have you not read about God said to you, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living." So, the point that I'm getting to with all of this is that the dreams that I've had where I was talking with my brother, and then again of the NCO, where I believe I was actually talking to who they were. When it comes down to witchcraft, when it comes down to these ghost hunting stories about those who they come across, like trying to communicate with the dead, you're not talking with who you're thinking you're talking to, because they're not there. They're either up in heaven or they are somewhere else where you cannot reach them. You can go to them through death, but they cannot come to you. They cannot respond to you. I think God allowed there to be not necessarily an exception, but when Paul tried to communicate with Samuel, when God turned his face away from him, he intercepted and he allowed something to happen for either Samuel to come back and speak to the witch, who then spoke to the king, or he told a spirit to go speak on behalf of Samuel to the witch. So either way, that's about the only real exception there as far as communicating with the dead. And that was because Saul was anointed, and his days were, I think he died later that same day or close to it. I'm not saying that's an exception, but that's like the closest thing that comes down to it, where like someone intervenes and you're talking to someone who it's either that person or it's on their behalf. So, yeah, when you try to reach out and talk to the dead, they're not there. They're in heaven or they're somewhere else. Being the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, that means he is God of the living. That is something I thought about for quite some time, because these dreams they weren't so much dreams to me, but they were conversations where I could say goodbye to my brother, and I could shake hands with the NCO that caused me identity issues and grief and a whole bunch of other issues. Yeah, Matthew 29 verses 29 through 33. You can definitely check that out. Yeah, that's been on my heart for quite some time. I never had time, or I didn't have the energy. Okay. The next thing that is very interesting here is not being there. I need to find it real quick. Yeah, Daily Disciple, I'm done trying to be a good Christian. You don't wear a mask without getting tired. You have a public face and you have a private face. But if you're trying to live by someone else's standards, you're definitely going to get tired. And I'm not talking about being a good citizen or being a good person. I'm not talking about that. But the idea of having lists, having ideas that you go by to live by, yeah, that goes in a different direction, but that's still a very good video. By Daily Disciple, yeah. Alright. I'm still trying to find this thing out here. Where are we at here? Did I delete this? I hope not. Ugh. Let me go back here. Why Christians should make horror movies. Ryder the Omniscient. And I can't remember if it was at the end or if it was at the beginning. Alright.
What if I told you that horror is actually one of the most Christian genres? That's not just my opinion. I'll show you how.
It's not exactly a Christian genre here. The problem is horror is done in a way where A, money is made, B, people are entertained, jump scared, a whole bunch of things where like it happens there. Okay, I'm going to start off here playing this, but I need to link this stuff down below so y'all can check it out in the description for yourself. But the idea here actually got me interested because I was already personally involved with doing something very similar to this. Well, two parts anyway. The first part is actually an adults entertainment crossover depicting love and true intimacy, and yet there was problems that arose with that. When you try to view intimacy, is it still the same thing in a public setting? Probably not, because when you take something outside of a relationship, the context changes, the relationship itself changes, and from what I understand, it falls apart. Two, when it comes down to horror movies, due to the entity that was in my life, I think there's a way to do it correctly. After all, hinging upon the Bible verse that talks about, our fight, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities of... Let me look that verse up because I'm going to get it wrong. I'm so going to get this wrong. I hate this. I know the verses, but remembering them for word, yeah, good luck. Our struggle is not against... Ephesians 6:12. Thank you. 12. Okay, the armor of God. Finally be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. Skip down to 12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Swapping over from NIV to another description, another interpretation, amplified version. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, contending only with physical opponents, quote unquote, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this present, quote unquote, darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly, quote unquote, supernatural places. I like Amplified because they go deep. Of course, due to the other conversation I had with Bruce, I questioned about the other one. Why am I blanking on it? We had a whole conversation on that. I hate this. King James Version. That's what it was. I might have to download that one too. So anyway, when you're doing horror, there's a way to do it. People are not necessarily opponents. They're not necessarily the issues or the problems, but they will add a part into this. The thing is, when you are trying to make a point and you're trying to have a story, you're trying to have a plot, having it set up in such a way where, like, it's not the people themselves that are the main antagonists or the problem, it's whatever's behind them, whoever's behind them. I will never watch any of these possession movies because I've already had that happen in front of me in two different occasions. I don't care for the Hollywood style for demonization or the other one, the possession movies. They all dramatize it. I will recount this here because I've already talked about it before, but in short, the first time was by John Hicks, and I think I don't know if he's still alive or not. He's an Asian guy, and I saw him change and turn his life around. He had tears in his eyes. He was praising God. Like 2002, 2003 was a very long time ago, like over 20 years ago. So he changed his life around. He turned, but apparently I think he was getting worse, and it was something tied to his aunt or his mom. I'm not sure which. But I walked in, coming back from somewhere, I can't remember. Maybe church. It could have been Sunday. And this was during my time at New Hope Academy, by the way. So I was gone, I came back. He was on the floor surrounded by some of the staff members, and he was foaming at the mouth. Not natural. and he was wheeled down in an ambulance. The second time was later down the road with Barry Edwards. He was formerly in the Crips, and then he joined the Bloods. The guy was awesome. I think he's no longer among the living, if I understand correctly, because I got a hold of two other older members, Ray being one of them. He ended up blocking me on Facebook, and he left. I think he never really changed to the point where he became a new person, which is probably why I explained, him blocking me. But not that we were always friends, but we were always on good terms. So there was like 12 people at New Hope Academy at the time. I don't want to go into details. All I know is that, according to other people, he ended up passing away. But I'm still in contact with one or two of the other people. So anyway, Barry Edwards and me and someone else, I'm blanking on his name, but I remember his face. We were in the hallway and doing whatever, talking, whatever. Everyone else was gone for extra activities on Sunday night or whatever. I can't remember. All I know is it's just us three left, and we were pretty much by ourselves for like a whole half hour. Anyway, so whatever we were talking about, I can't remember, but Barry's head, he dipped down and basically popped back up, wide-eyed, didn't know where he was at, was very quiet for a couple of seconds, got up, started growling and pacing around, swearing and telling us to turn off the lights. So wide-eyed, looking back and forth, and just stomping around, cursing and growling. And then it seemed like forever, but it was like roughly 30 minutes, give or take. He ended up going outside and sitting down on the basketball court that was in the back of the building, give or take. So the police and whoever else showed up there, they ended up getting him. So when they came out, started walking out towards where he was at, he basically woke up and he's like, what happened? Like, I didn't hear him say anything. I just saw him like be confused, get up, and then look where he was standing at. It was very unusual, both to experience it and then knowing that he had no memory of being in the hallway one moment and then 30 minutes later, which, a couple seconds later, being outside. Demonization and demon possession, they go hand in hand. Two different, very similar, but, not being there and having someone else be behind the wheel in some ways is a very scary thing. But if you're the one being controlled, you're not going to know unless you have gaps in your memory that just are not really explained. Last year, or I don't know, somewhere over 6 months ago, I watched Moon Knight, where they explain the gaps in the memory pretty nicely. Very cool. Totally different. Because that's not anything close to demon possession or demonization. That's like whatever the term is for split personalities. Yeah. Anyway, in regards to that not being there, and in regards to what he was talking about with horror movies, so you can portray spiritual forces as the antagonist or as the cause of it all. And I'll link back to The Wishmaster, which is an excellent series talking about exactly that. Being the main antagonist, the main point of focus in a spiritual way, but not necessarily in a biblical way, in a way to portray why this matters. Obviously, making deals with the devil is going to come back and bite you. Yeah. I probably lost connection with my phone here, so give me a sec.
Video, you're most likely the horror fact the Bible has some rather that most people would rather gloss over. And to tie everything together, I'll be using my own horror short film.
I had to put that aside but to depict reality in a way that matters, not in a way that's going to be violent, gross, disrespectful.